So this is just the structure of the presentation. I don't think I need to spend time on this slide. We will, go through each of the 10 points in due course. So let me go straight to the first point, which is the need for a framework for developing environment statistics. What has been found, I've been in this field over 26 years now, and it's still a very challenging and difficult subject matter, but we're still, making good progress, and I think a lot of improvement has taken place over the years. So we find that environment statistics are multi and interdisciplinary, so a framework is really helpful to try to mark out the areas and include the statistics that fall within this very wide scope of the environment. There are varied different kinds of sources to collect the data. That can be through administrative records, data from monitoring stations and network, remote sensing, that's why we have our large geospatial community out there, as well as the traditional statistical censuses and surveys. And this will be helpful because a framework provides the common tools and definitions, classifications, etc. that can bring the data together, because often the data are very widely dispersed across the country or different institutions. And then, of course, when you have a multitude of varied types of sources of data, then it means you have a very large number of partners or stakeholders. So again, this framework will help to bring together the different stakeholders and provide a common platform for them to base their work on. So some of you may know that the first framework was published in 1984, which is a very long time ago, and it was in 2010 when the 41st session of the United Nations Statistical Commission, which is our governing body for statistics in the sense that it is comprised of directors of national statistical offices, and they govern our work program. So it's only if they tell us that we should do something can we actually go ahead and implement new methodologies or data collection, etc. And so in 2010, the Commission recommended that we revise the framework, and then it was endorsed. The finalization of the framework was endorsed in 2013, and the Statistical Commission mentioned that the framework is also recognized as a very useful tool in the context of the SDGs and the post-2015 development agenda. I'm not going to go into the details here, but just to, if you're interested, this is the process of the revision of the framework. And as Bill Sontag mentioned, we established an expert group on the revision of the framework, in which we had about 13 developing countries and 10 developed countries, as well as 7 international agencies, and that participated in the process. And we tested a basic set, which I will come to later, of environment statistics in 25 different countries, and we got a lot of very good feedback, and we feel comfortable that we were able to put this out to the global community for countries to use as a selection or as a menu of environment statistics that they might wish to collect in their own countries. And we also had a global consultation process of both the framework and the basic set that is normal for any statistical product in our division, where we have to have countries sort of vet it and give us feedback through an open global consultation. So come to the framework itself. You've been seeing the picture on the right-hand side. That is our logo, and I will describe it in a little more detail later. But the framework is a very flexible and multi-purpose conceptual and statistical framework. And we stress the word flexible and multi-purpose because flexible it's very difficult in the subject matter. I think, as some of you might be familiar with the old 1984 framework or with other approaches like the pressure state response framework and similar ones, those imply a cause-effect relationship, and in this subject matter it's very difficult to draw direct cause-effect relationships. So we took a very different approach this time, and as you will see as we go further, we have hopefully achieved some form of flexibility. People can criticize to say that it's not systematic, but at the same time, I think the subject matter owes it to itself to remain flexible, because the science is continuously changing, concepts and methods and definitions are evolving, and we have to be able to accommodate these different things that take place. So the framework also provides an organizing structure to guide the collection and compilation of environment statistics, and it is broad, comprehensive, and integrated. So it brings together a lot of different aspects of the environment, and you can also use it to inform about cross-cutting issues such as climate change, which is very hot on the agenda right now. And for information, at the Statistical Commission meeting in March this year, our division has prepared a paper on climate change statistics that is available on our website. We did introduce this subject in 2009 to the Statistical Commission, but due to political issues at that time, it didn't really go much further. But we feel comfortable this time to bring it back on the table, and we will see how it goes. So this is about developing climate change statistics and indicators. So the scope of the FDS covers the biophysical aspects of the environment, those aspects of the human subsystem that directly influence the state and quality of the environment, and the impacts of the changing environment on the human subsystem. You will see a slide that describes this a little bit more in a picture form. And the users of the FDS, we target a broad community, including, as I mentioned earlier, primarily the statisticians in national statistical offices, but of course environmental ministries and agencies, as we know that in many countries it is often the Minister of Environment or equivalent institution that is responsible for collecting a lot of the environmental data, and then they work with the statistical office in bringing them together to link with social and economic statistics, where the National Statistical Office has the lead role in the country. There are other producers of environment statistics, like I said, different kinds of agencies, research institutes, mapping institutions. There are lots of different ones. And the FDS also helps mark out the roles of different data producers, helping to facilitate coordination, and indicates the corresponding availability of methodologies and classifications that you will have to go into the FDS to see what I mean there. We have tables where we try to include these kinds of methodologies and classifications and further details that can give guidance. So this is what I was saying earlier. This is just a picture form of the relationship between the environment, the human subsystem, and the interactions between them. So the light green arrows show the processes within the environment, and the blue arrow shows the processes within the human subsystem, and the dark green arrows show the interactions between the environment and the human subsystem. And this just gives you the conceptual foundation of the FDS, where we look at environmental conditions and their changes, and it shows how the human subsystem is impacted by changes in environmental conditions, and how the human subsystem contributes to changing environmental subsystems. And here we have the first diagram where you can see more clearly the different components of the FDS. There are 6 components, and at the center we have component 1, which is environmental conditions and quality, and this relates to all the different components. And in addition, all the components relate to each other, which is the reason why we have these dotted lines in between each of the components to show that they can blend, between each other. And the components are multi-level, as you'll see later, comprised of components, subcomponents, topics, and individual statistics. I'm introducing this here. Normally we have a separate presentation on the basic set, but of course the basic set of environment statistics is part of the FDS. So I will mention a few pieces of information here. So the basic set is comprised of the 3 tiers, and I'll come to that in a minute. And it's comprehensive list of environment statistics, but it is not exhaustive. And it is meant to help countries develop programs according to their own priorities and needs for environment statistics. And it's also flexible enough to be adapted to individual countries' concerns and resources. And it is comprised of a progression of 3 tiers and based on level of relevance, availability, and methodological development of the statistics. And you can, I put in the link here where you can find the basic set. And there are 3 tiers. So we have tier 1, which is the core set. We decided to emphasize that as the core, and that includes 100 statistics which have high priority and relevance, and for which we believe have a sound methodological foundation. And tier 2 includes 200 statistics, but it's got there's more a need for research or methodological development and needs more time to implement and resources. And tier 3 is again more longer term group of statistics at 158. But of course, countries, if they feel tier 2 statistics should be considered tier 1 in their own country, they can do whatever they like. They can move the statistics around because, of course, countries will have different priorities and needs. And the core set of statistics, as I said, contains a limited number of statistics, which is 100, just to give some kind of boundary so countries don't get overwhelmed with a bunch of 500 statistics. So we thought to sort of show it in a limited area as well. And it represents a broad consensus opinion on the pertinence and feasibility of these statistics, because we have tested them and worked with many countries on coming up with this core set. This just gives you the different tiers according to the number, according to the components, like how many statistics are included in each component. And both the basic and core sets were developed in response to demand from countries, because many countries would ask us or write to us and tell us that they didn't really know where to start and what kind of statistics should they focus on. So we felt they would be helpful for countries. And also they were developed in response to their relevance to environmental issues. So we went through all the different issues and tried to come up with the most important statistics that would be useful. I would like to emphasize here that these are statistics, so they're not indicators. We were asked by our statistical commission to focus on statistics. The difference being very simple, that an indicator would be like the proportion of forest area over land area, whereas that includes 2 statistics, and what we have included in the basic set is the individual statistics, so to be the forest area and the land area. Because often, like you'll see in the SDG discussion, you know, on the indicators, sometimes one of the indicators includes like 6 different statistics or 6 different, you know, variables. So it can be misleading when you say a list of indicators is 200. It could mean 400 statistics. So we wanted to be extremely transparent and show countries that in order to have an indicator, these are the actual number of statistics you need, and this is what it would require in terms of investment, time, and resources. And the statistics in these basic and core sets would be useful for generating national sets or databases, reporting on environmental or sustainable development, for calculating indicators, as I mentioned, and for generating environmental and economic accounts. This slide just shows you the multi-level approach of the FDS. In the purple color, you can see the 6 components. In the light green color, you see the subcomponents, of which there are 21. And then we will have 60 statistical topics, which I've not illustrated here because there are too many, but there is an example on the right and bottom side. That's an example of the basic set, and I've included here component 1, environmental conditions and quality, which has a subcomponent on environmental quality, and the statistical topic here would be topic 1.3.1, which is air quality. And then you see the list of statistics. In terms of air quality, we have included 12 statistics that you would need to measure air quality depending on, you know, again, the priorities and resources and issue in the particular country or city. Sorry, I forgot about these individual slides. Okay, so now move to the main attributes of the components of the FDS. Again, I won't dwell into too much detail here. We have a listing of the components, their description. For example, environmental conditions and quality includes meteorological, hydrographical, geological, etc. conditions and characteristics of the environment. And the types of data you need here are geospatial, physical, and qualitative data. And then the main sources of how to get the data and institutions include monitoring systems, remote sensing, and the different types of institutions like hydrological, geological, etc. And in the last column, we decided to include the relationship to a very familiar framework that's a driving force, pressure, state, impact response framework, which is the DPSIR. And also the system of environmental economic accounts, of which my division, statistics division, is also responsible for. And we try to show here how each of the FDS components links to both the DPSIR and the SCA. And this is the remaining 3 components with the same kind of information. I will now briefly speak to each of the components. So this is an example of the first component, the environmental conditions and quality, which has 3 subcomponents: the physical conditions, land cover, ecosystems and biodiversity, and environmental quality. And here we give an example of core set statistics. So if you go to topic 1.2.2 under land cover, ecosystems and biodiversity, this is focusing on ecosystems and biodiversity. And then we have 2 statistics here, the area of ecosystems and the known flora and fauna species. These are core set statistics, so again, I don't think I mentioned before, but in the basic set itself, we have separated the statistics by having the core set, that's tier 1, in bold, and then the second tier in plain text and the third tier in italics, so to help the user to identify quickly the level of or the level of tier to which it belongs. This is an example of component 2, which is environmental resources and their use, which is comprised of 6 subcomponents looking at minerals, energy, land, soil, biological resources, and water resources. And again, the example we have chosen here is topic 2.5.3, which is about crops. And again, you can see the number of statistics that we think are relevant and important to be able to inform about the topic on crops. And again, here I think you can clearly see the bolding and the italics and the regular text to show you the different types of statistics that are needed and their importance according to the different tiers. And then the same thing with residuals. This looks at emissions to air, wastewater, waste, and the release of chemical substances. And here we looked at emissions of greenhouse gases as an example. And we have selected here carbon dioxide, the main greenhouse gases, and the direct ones and the indirect ones, which are listed here on the screen. In component 4, which is looking at the extreme events and disasters, we've divided it into 2 subcomponents, the natural extreme events and disasters, and then the technological disasters. And in the example, we're looking at the natural extreme events and disasters and addressing both the occurrence of these events and disasters and the people affected by them, as well as the economic losses due to the event or disasters. And these are the common statistics that one would be interested in compiling. Subcomponent 5 touches on human settlements and environmental health, and here we have looked at, as an example, topic 5.1.2, which is the access to selected basic services such as drinking water, sanitation, municipal waste, wastewater, and water supply. I have been informed by Derek that I'll be able to have another presentation in April where we focus on the SDGs and environment statistics and the FDS a little bit again, but I think that would be really important because I see on this screen there are two statistics here, the population using an improved drinking water source and the population using an improved sanitation facility that are expected to be directly linked to SDG targets and indicators. So again, I think this list of statistics here can be really helpful for that purpose as well. And the last component looks at environmental protection, management, and engagement. And here we have 4 subcomponents looking at the expenditure on environmental protection and resource management. We look at environmental governance and regulation. Then we look at extreme event preparedness and disaster management. And finally, not a very statistical subcomponent, but we felt it's important, which is environmental information and awareness. And the example we chose here was looking at the annual government environmental expenditure, which falls under topic 6.1.1, which is the government environment protection and resource management expenditure. So this is just a very quick overview. When we do a full-scale workshop, we then have presentations on each of the 6 components about the environmental issues at stake, the FDS components, the statistics themselves, etc. So it's much more in detail than what I'm able to do in a short presentation, which is more like an overview. And also in the FDS we have Chapter 5, which looks at cross-cutting issues where we try to link, for example, water and environment, energy and environment, climate change, and agriculture and environment, and try to bring together the different policies and statistics that are needed to inform on these particular issues. And I have an example here, which is the relationship between agriculture and the environment. And again, in the FDS itself, you will see all these types of tables, which will really clearly give you a very good understanding of the flows between the different statistics. Next example is on climate change statistics, which again, I'm conscious of the time, so it's similar to the previous one. I'm going to skip on this one. This slide looks at the links between the FDS and social and economic statistics. As I mentioned before, it is very much linked to different systems like the SEA, the DPSIR framework, etc. This particular slide shows the relationship between the FDS to other framework systems and indicator sets, and you can see how environmental data, related economic and social statistics feed into the FDS, and how the FDS feeds into either into the SCA or directly into indicator frameworks, and then how the SNA, which is a system of national accounts, feeds into the system of environmental economic accounting, which provides the basic economic statistics, and then the FDS can provide the environment statistics. This is now the SAT, which is an application or a supporting tool of the FDS. Again, this is normally a separate presentation, but I put a couple of slides in here to give you an understanding of it. I will move on from here. This is the Environment Statistics Self-Assessment Tool, which countries in assessing and diagnosing the state of environment statistics in the application of the FDS. And it is used to develop their own programs to collect data and assess the state of the statistics and the data gaps and needs for development of further statistics. And the asset should be used in a multi-stakeholder consultation. So we encourage, the statistical office and all Ministry of Environment should play the lead role and include all main relevant stakeholders and establish or convene a committee or working group to bring them all together to discuss and agree on a common set of responses, which represents the overall country response. I'll skip on the slide. It's just further uses of the asset. And the structure here, it's divided into 2 parts. The first part is the institutional dimension of environment statistics, and the second one is the statistics level itself. So the first one looks at sort of more questions on the structure of the statistical system, on environment statistics, its mandates, the setup, the organization, collaboration with other partners, the resources, etc. And part 2 goes into the basic set of environment statistics and serves as a tool to assess for each statistic the national relevance, the importance, the availability, and the data sources of the environment, of the statistics themselves. And it also helps to identify quantitative and qualitative data gaps and help to develop a plan to fill them over the long term. It's just a list of the sections in part 1. I will skip on this as well. And then, so as I said, part 2, it just has a set of questions which I've already described before to give you much more detail. It is in an Excel file format, so countries can fill it and expand on it and use it as they see fit. I think, again, here I've already explained the main uses, so I can move on from here. And the last section is on the some information about countries' experience in applying the FDS, and we have found already, I think around 50 countries have already attempted to implement the FDS, and they're using it as a flexible, adaptable tool, and they're very happy with that aspect of it. And countries are using it on their own, sometimes through our capacity building and technical assistance in form of workshops or training, and other partner agencies have also been implementing the FDS in their own member states. And countries have also felt that it's been helpful to provide guidance in their countries on how to organize and develop the statistics for their own national planning and reporting. These are some of the countries that we are aware of that have been using the FDS or have requested assistance, and you can see the 2 different colors, black and blue. Blue is which countries have expressed interest or have asked for assistance. And we currently have groups of countries, like in the Common Market for East and Southern Africa, that's COMESA. We have the East African Community, and we have the Economic Community of West African States, and we have conducted 3 workshops in those regions last year. And then with the Gulf Cooperation Council, as I said earlier, we had a workshop in 2014. And the final slides are just an example of Ecuador, how Ecuador has changed its system of environment statistics based on the guidance and structure of the components of the FDS. And I know it's in Spanish, so I will also just give you the visual presentation of it. These are the 6 components. This is how they structured their database, and included the 6 components of the FDS. And again, here, these are the subcomponents in their system that they have categorized their own data according to the FDS subcomponents. And this is an example of the area under environmental conservation and management that they have presented here on their website. And the final slide, as I think I already, we have at UNSD been conducting a series of training workshops, which we continue to do. We have 2 development account projects, one focusing in the East African region, and the other is in the Latin American, Caribbean, and Asian region. And the second project, Latin American, Caribbean, and Asian region, is looking at green economy indicators, so that looks at energy, environment, and industry statistics. But both these projects are using FDS as well. And finally, on this slide, I mentioned here the blueprint for action that was also adopted by the Statistical Commission in 2013, gives guidelines for countries and regional institutions to look at how they can improve or set up a plan to develop environment statistics, and this is also available on our website. So thank you very much. I think we still have a few minutes. I'm sorry if I rushed a little bit, but I tried to keep it within time. Thank you.
Good.